Hello and welcome back to what I wished I'd known about self-publishing before I got started. I am Karlie with Dragon Key Press. In the background you may hear maintenance using a leaf blower, or you may hear my cat who is insistent on being right under my feet. I'm also still using a borrowed computer, and my brain is apparently dead, so please forgive me as we go into this edition of Real Talk. And honestly, I think the subject matter is quite apt at the moment. Today I want to talk about imposter syndrome. For those of you who don't know what that is, it is also known as imposter phenomenon or impostorium. It is a psychological occurrence in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. I'm pretty sure the majority of us out there who have put ourselves out there have probably experienced this at one point or another, because there's always somebody who can do it better, who did it first, who did it faster, who everybody likes more, or whatever reason that makes them somehow superior to whatever we think we are. And I'm just here to tell you to stop. You should never compare yourself to somebody else or their ability, because they are not you. They don't see the world the way you see it, they don't experience it the way you experience it, and they don't create the way you create. And yes, it is very easy to feel intimidated by people who have found and achieved success. I have that same problem myself. I recently met James Owen, which I think I have mentioned previously, and when I didn't know who he was, it was like, oh hey, cool, a fellow writer at a writer's conference, this is awesome. And then I realized who he was, and that he was a successfully published author with who knows how many books under his belt, a optioned movie, blah blah blah, etc., and I immediately felt intimidated, and it was crazy sauce. And yes, I may have talked about this and imposter syndrome before, and I think it bears saying again, especially since I find myself in circumstances where there are a lot of people who do not appreciate what I do, because they don't see the value in it. And I think imposter syndrome goes in that direction too, where you feel like an imposter because you do not have the success or the accomplishments, or you don't feel like you have the talents of other people who have found, or at least seem to have found, success. So your fear of being found out as a fraud is probably heightened because people are like, oh, well, you don't seem that special. What you're doing doesn't seem that hard. When are you going to get a real job? Or things like that. And yeah, I've totally talked about this before, but I am currently experiencing a period in my life where I am having a lot more of these doubts and struggles, especially in the modern economy, and things aren't going as well as I would like. My books are currently not really selling, and I honestly feel rather like a failure. So definitely real talk going on there, but I'm going to keep this completely, totally raw and real, and probably won't edit out much, in case anybody wondered. But yeah, imposter syndrome, phenomenon, impostorism, whatever you want to call it. It is such an easy thing as a creator to fall into, because there will always be somebody who does it more, does it better, faster, has more accolades, looks like they are just nailing it. And we tend to forget that these people who look like they just have it all together probably don't. But we get this idea and we put them on this pedestal, and the idea that we will ever get on this pedestal that we have created for these people is just so mind-boggling hard, because we have put them on an impossible precipice of accomplishment where we negate our own skills, our own talents, our own accomplishments, and that fear that we will never amount to much of anything that we will be exposed as that fraud who's just pretending, that imposter. It becomes really raw and really real and really hard to ignore sometimes, especially when life just goes to pot. And in our current economy and state of the world, that happens a lot. And as a writer, a publisher, an editor, an illustrator, any creative field, it is so easy right now to fall into that rabbit hole of feeling like we are not good enough, that we are a fraud, that what we do has no merit because there's already somebody who's done it better, who's done it more of it, who has all of those, whatever, blah, 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 insert whatever into that blank space. And it's a very hard place to get out of. It's a very difficult realization that there's always going to be somebody better. There's always going to be somebody who has more accolades, more accomplishments, more awards, more acclaim, bigger fan base. There's always going to be somebody else. And the difference between feeling like you're a fraud and using that as a stepping stone, or that instead of using it as a means to freeze yourself and basically immobilize your ability to move forward, you can use it as a stepping stone instead. Well, they have all this. I would like to have it myself. How can I get there? It's just getting over that fear of maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I am just pretending that I am. And that's probably going to be one of the biggest things you're actually going to be fighting with, especially if you don't have that support. And I know I've mentioned things like this before, but it always bears repeating every so often. Just because you aren't as good as whatever person you have put up on that pedestal does not mean you are a fraud. It does not negate any effort or work that you have put into being where you are, in whatever field it is you are aspiring to be, even if you do not currently have anything to show for it to anybody else but yourself. You know what you have accomplished. You know what you are capable of doing. And as soon as you can push that doubt aside or use it as the stepping stone it is meant to be, because I am a firm believer that all of our weaknesses are stepping stones to our greatest strengths. If we can use those weaknesses as the stepping stones they should be, then we will stop comparing ourselves to these people, these amazing, awesome, up on the pedestal, above the clouds, no way we can possibly reach them people, because the majority of what we have envisioned in our heads about all of these people we compare ourselves to, it's imaginary, it's not real. Yes, they have all of these cool, awesome, wonderful things, but we don't see what they had to do under the surface. We don't know the struggles they had. We don't know what sacrifices they had to make to get where they are. And so it's super easy to negate our own trials and struggles and tribulations in getting to where we are. And that's a really debilitating and dangerous place to be. So, if anything, at this point, and this is a reminder to myself right now as well as to all of you, what you have done matters. What talents you have developed, no matter how small you may think they are amazing. What you think is trash, somebody else will look at and think, oh my gosh, that is so awesome, I could never do that. They just don't speak out, or we aren't in a place where we can hear them. So never negate what it is you do, what you create, your skills, your talents, even the smallest accomplishment. I wrote so many pages today. I edited so much. I did a rough outline of what my illustrations are going to be. I put something on the page. Whatever that accomplishment is, celebrate it. Because it's not just a little thing. It's a big thing. or at least it will lead to big things. So even if you have that imposter syndrome, which I honestly really struggle with, if you haven't figured that out by now, you can use that as a tool to help you become a better writer, a better publisher, editor, illustrator, cover creator, formatter, whatever aspect of self-publishing or any other aspect of your life. You can use that to say, well, yes, maybe I am a fraud, but I'm going to be the best fraud I can be. And if that's where you have to be right now, then so be it. Eventually you'll believe more in yourself. Well, hey, I did this. Let's move on to the next step. And keep on going. Eventually you get enough momentum that it doesn't matter what other people think. And that fear you have inside, realizing you can be on par with these people you see as impossible milestones, it won't be as impossible. Because there's always going to be somebody who's looking up, thinking there's no way I can get that. There's no way I'll ever get what they have. And you'd probably be surprised to know that there are people who feel the same way about you. I hope that kind of gave you a little insight, a little help, and it certainly helped me a little bit, but yeah. Never negate what you can do, what you have done, just because somebody else appears to have done it better, faster, whatever. I'm Karlie with Dragon Key Press. I do hope to see you next time, and hopefully I'll have my laptop back.